In a story from NBC News, they claim that Twitter is testing new ways to fight misinformation, including a community-based points system. A leaked demo features bright red and orange badges for tweets that have been deemed harmfully misleading. This story is interesting, and a lot of people are tweeting about it, especially people on the left. Some Bernie Sanders supporters are concerned this will be weaponized by the establishment to discredit anyone who dare challenge the system. We can see here in this image, there's a let me zoom in on this because it's really small. There's a tweet from Bernie Sanders that says 40% of the guns in this country are sold without any background checks. We have to end the absurdity of the gun show loophole. There is then this orange box that says harmfully misleading. Twitter community reports have identified this tweet as violating the community policy on harmfully misleading information. This tweet's visibility will be reduced. Well, a lot of people on the left are concerned. But what I find absolutely delightful about this whole article is that it's actually written by the same journalist who claimed the 2A rally in Virginia was a white nationalist rally. The same journalist who has published tons of false information and failed to disclose his connection to some of the subjects of his stories when he tried claiming 4chan was threatening journalists. Turns out it was his friends, and then a day later he went, oh no, now they're coming for me. So you want to talk about misinformation? I think it's kind of funny that I can't trust this story because this guy lies all the time. So how can I believe that Twitter's actually going to be implementing this when the guy, it's a story about Twitter fighting misinformation from a guy who literally posts misinformation on Twitter. So I don't know what you want to believe, but I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to wait for some legit confirmation, but we'll read it anyway. What I find fascinating about it, first and foremost, is that the first person getting smeared is none other than Bernie Sanders. He's in the demo. Coming from a guy who's publicly, posted misinformation and lies before, from NBC, which is, mainstream establishment news. We know they're not big fans of Bernie. We know MSNBC was keeping Yang, out of the network coverage of the presidential debates, and then Yang dropped out. I'm not going to trust them. So when I see like Kyle Kalinske, right, progressive Bernie Sanders supporter, saying this is an abuse of power, like this is going to be abused like crazy, and the story's being pushed by somebody who does lie, stands to reason it's not trustworthy, to say the least. But we'll read it anyway. And I'm letting you know for that reason. And we'll talk about Twitter. NBC News reports Twitter confirmed the leaked demo, which was accessible on a publicly available site, is one possible iteration of a new policy to target misinformation it plans to roll out on March 5th. In this version, disinformation or misleading information posted by public figures will be corrected directly beneath the tweet by fact checkers and journalists who are verified on the platform, and possibly other users who will participate in new community reports feature, which the demo claims is like Wikipedia. We're exploring a number of ways to address misinformation and provide more context for tweets on Twitter, a Twitter spokesperson said. Misinformation is a critical issue, and we will be testing many different ways to address it. You know what this really means, right? It means that Twitter is going to start labeling conservative posts, or anyone who's not a leftist, your post is going to get labeled as misinformation. We saw this happen with PragerU. You probably know who they are. They took an article, a fact-based article. They took the data out of it and they made a post. It was about Bernie Sanders voting for border fencing. And they said something like, did Bernie Sanders support border fencing? Did Democrats support it? Yes. PragerU posted this image on Facebook, and Facebook blocked it with an image saying it's fake news, and then linked literally to the story that Prager had quoted in the tweet. And that's what you can expect with this Twitter rollout. They're going to be giving fringe leftist weirdos the ability to block your information, even if it's factually correct. I will stress. PragerU found a story from like the AP and said, look at this data. Facebook blocked their post saying it was a lie. And at the bottom said, here's the truth. And it was the exact same story. So you know what I did? I screen grabbed PragerU's post and I posted it myself with the link to the actual story saying, here's the source of what is being claimed by PragerU, and Facebook blocked my post as well. So assuming this guy who works for NBC News and lies all the time is actually telling the truth in this instance, maybe he is. This means that we're going to see left-wing activists who work in media have disproportionate power once again to silence critics or people who could post legitimate information. You ever wonder why people on the left don't debate? Well, this is why. This is a good example of the same thing. But the reason why is that they will be proven wrong. So when you counter their lies with legitimate information, like you can prove that what Bernie is saying is what Bernie is saying, I think here actually is misleading. But anyway, the point is, if you say something truthful or at least cited to a legitimate news source, they can block your content instead of having to actually debate the idea. That's the power that Twitter will wield. And if you don't believe me, let me show you this story from the other day from Reclaim the Net. Twitter accused of helping Vox Media take over Twitter account. Do you want to know how I got verified on Twitter? Do you think it's because Twitter finds high-profile people and says, you deserve that blue check mark because you're famous? That's not how it happens, at least for the most part. There are a lot of people who have been verified for being high profile, and Twitter will contact you and say, we're going to verify you. I got verified because Vice Media made a phone call or an email or whatever and said, verify him. And they said, you got it, buddy. And they did. Twitter will absolutely do what these major mainstream leftist digital platforms want them to do. In this instance, Vox wanted access to a private Twitter account that posted sports clips. It was created by somebody. They later got a job at Vox. They promoted Vox content through their account and then left. Due to that California law, Vox ended up letting them go. But Vox wanted to get access to that Twitter account because, it's prominent. So they reached out to Twitter and Twitter said, you got it, and handed over someone's private account to a major leftist corporation. So when it comes to these policy positions on misinformation, do you think they're going to go hunt down some conservatives and be like, we want to make sure you have this ability as well? No. What's going to happen is fringe lefty weirdo activists are going to start brigading and flagging things, and it's going to be an all-out flame war. Twitter will likely empower journalists, I'm doing air quotes because they're going to end up being Vox personalities, and they're going to be like, you go ahead and decide what is or isn't fake news. And then what's really funny about how this all works is on Facebook, you actually have a website called checkyourfact.com, which is part of the Daily Caller News Foundation. So the left routinely attacks Facebook, even though it was the Poynter Institute, this journalism university, that approved Daily Caller's checkyourfact.com as an approved fact checker. They're not the same company. Daily Caller there's similarities. I shouldn't say similarities. There's an overlap in the corporate structure. But Check Your Fact is its own, branch. If we were going to criticize, or basically what the left does is instead of saying Check Your Fact, they just say Daily Caller to make it seem like it is literally the Daily Caller that's doing the fact checking, which it isn't. That's the point. So the left will smear and they will provide misinformation themselves, misrepresenting who's doing the fact checking. That brings me to the main point of this video. The interesting paradox of fake news journalists presenting who routinely make fake news, now asking for the power to label other people fake news. Congratulations, it's the world we live in. The left often accuses Donald Trump of doing what they do. They claim that investigating a political rival is abuse of power, and the Obama administration literally did just that before Trump was even in office. So there you go. You can very much expect the left to produce misinformation, especially about this, be given the reins to control that power, and then they're going to use it to smear and shut down their political opponents. So I'll read a little bit of this. I'll read the conclusion here because I don't want to read through the whole bit about how Twitter is basically catering to Vox, but the end should be sufficient. They say, after receiving an email from Twitter saying that his account's two-factor authentication was disabled and he could no longer access the account, Hand strongly believes that Twitter might have lent a helping hand to Vox in the vicious takedown of his account. Considering the whole narrative, it's hard not to question whether Twitter actually helped Vox Media in wrongfully claiming an account that doesn't originally belong to them. Twitter quickly apologized and acknowledged, after acknowledging it was It said recently, Twitter shockingly gave SUNY Geneseo college access to a parody account. So here's how it works. If you're a certified digital media organization, you make a phone call to Twitter, you say, give me this, give me that, and they're going to say, you got it, buddy. Because this is not the first time they've given access to a private account to one of these companies. If they want it, they got it. YouTube does the same thing. Preferential access to large mainstream corporations. It's how the game is being played. Why? Well, I think there's some political bias in there. But for the most part, the political bias comes from the users of the site who are on the left. They're going to manipulate that power. But it's also corporate interest. certain big companies to Twitter generate revenue and produce tons of content. And Twitter and Facebook want that. So they'll give them whatever they want. When Facebook finally relents and allows checkyourfact.com in, which is part of the Daily Caller News Foundation, the leftists start producing fake news to try and get them removed and go after Facebook for it. So there's no winning. They want you to bend the knee and they want the power. And guess what? They're gaining it. I'll wrap it up. I don't believe this story is true because this dude's a liar. So take it for what it is. But it might end up happening. This may be one of the, instances of where he actually published some real information. I'll leave it there. Stick around. I got one more segment coming up for you in a few minutes, and I will see you all shortly.